Hola, mi gente. We are back with another episode of Objections. I am excited about this show because we are right on the coattails of the big Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp crash. So I am super duper excited about this subject. I
Hang
want.
on, that's me.
Oh, is that you?
Yeah, if you're hearing that,
Yeah, there's an echo.
and now it's gone.
Okay. Hi, whoever
Hey,
just came in.
hey.
Okay, so as you know, I am on the block with Jen, and I collab with Talk with Frank Goodin for Objections a couple times a week, sometimes on this page, sometimes on his page. So again, I stress, okay, before we get into our juicy subject, please subscribe to this page and subscribe to Talk with Frank Goodin, or you will miss Objections. And you want to watch Objections because it's the only show where you can jump on and object as passionately as you want with full respect and get respect in return. So you want to be on Objections, but if you don't subscribe and you don't hit the notification bell, you will not know when we are, on here going back and forth, right? So please, now that we got that out the way, welcome, Frank.
Yes, so glad to be here with you again. Chop it up. We got a good one today. We got a good one. So timely.
Yes, it's very timely, and we've had a lot of good ones lately. So please, guys, whether you're on my page or on Talk with Frank Goodin, look for the red square Objections. We're really going at it with subjects, and we're addressing them in a way that no one is addressing them. And I know you hear that a lot, but I promise you, if you tune into our show, you will see it is a whole different program. Okay. Guarantee, money back guarantee. Okay, guys, so we're here. Hi, Just Being Jazzy podcast. Okay, so the subject today is something that's very important to me because, as you guys probably heard me say a thousand times, I'm very anti-social media. I think it's the downfall of humanity. And I know a lot of people going to be like, that's melodramatic, but I really do think we are headed for a very ugly, scary place with the growth of social media. And a lot of money hungry people are putting us in positions of addiction to social media for their monetary gain. And again, so as you guys know, Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp crashed because they're all under the same umbrella. And people were in a disarray. Right? People were in a disarray. It's back up now. So now all the memes are coming up about people who don't really have careers unless, their social media. And then it was revealed that Mark Zuckerberg lost $7 billion in a couple of hours. Mark Zuckerberg today lost $7 billion in a couple of hours with the crash of Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. So that alone right there, which I'd love to save for another show, shows the power of people in masses doing the same thing. Now, albeit they were forced not to be on their social media. But if he lost $7 billion today, can you imagine if everybody band together and didn't go on social media for a week? We'd bankrupt him, right? So I found that very interesting that in just the span of a couple of hours, $7 billion was lost. It shows the power of masses, but that's for another show. That's also going to be juicy. Today, Frank and I are tackling, is social media desensitizing us to our detriment? Is social media desensitizing us to our detriment? Okay. Now, I like to explain what I meant by that because, it's my question. And what I mean by that is the longer we spend on social media, we see a lot. We've seen everything from, breakups to street fights to people getting murdered live on camera to people getting raped live on Facebook. We've seen we've seen cartel chop off people's heads, so it's been really graphic on these social media platforms. Really graphic. There's porn going on and all kinds of things, and we don't even have to seek out these things, right? Because a public forum is a public forum. So we're just scrolling. It was like, oh my God. And then, we have to block the person or unfollow the person, but we've seen it. Right? and everything records in our brains, whether we like to believe so or not. Everything is recorded. These are cameras, right? And there are files back here. So we've already seen it. And, we have the joke, can't unsee that, right? So are we becoming desensitized? Now, I don't know if you guys read the caption of this show, but basically they were saying that being desensitized can be a good thing for mental health, right? And I think what they mean by that is if you're not as sensitive, things can't affect you as much, right? But are we becoming too desensitized now where we are not being empathetic or sympathetic with people because we're seeing it all day, every day? So who cares? It's another murder. Who cares? It's another fight. Who cares? It's another missing girl. Oh, what's Beyonce wearing? Are we becoming too desensitized? So, short answer, Frank, do you think we're becoming too desensitized? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing before I give you my answer?
Gotcha. This is one of those questions that I think people sometimes have a difference of opinion about because they disagree about whether or not people can even be desensitized to really anything. They kind of wonder about that, even though um, I believe science has proven in a lot of different ways that this happens. We can kind of think about it from a logical perspective. So, what I want to do before I even get into whether or not things are happening to our detriment or not is just take a step back and walk us through a little bit of how and why we should not even debate the idea of desensitization. So, I think we all know that number one, take it all the way back. Human beings adapt. This is what we do. That's what we're built for. You can look at it physically. Physically, we adapt. If you run a mile, and you've never run a mile before, but you start running a mile every day, over time, your body will increase its endurance to be able to make it easier to run that mile. It's going to get easier for you over time. If you lift heavy weights, over time, you will gain muscle. You will increase your strength to be able to one day be able to lift that kind of weight easier than when you first started. So that's physically.
Correct.
Physiologically or chemically, it's the same thing. If you give a person a drug in the same dosage consistently, over time, our body naturally builds a tolerance to that drug. This is how people become addicts over time to things like alcohol or caffeine or nicotine or hard drugs. Um, Over time, if you want it to have that same effect, it takes a little bit of a time to be able to do that. And so it should not, I think, surprise people that physiologically or emotionally, if you expose somebody to what might be normally stressful conditions, that you can over time build a tolerance to that. Over time, emotionally and psychologically, you become accustomed to that. And so it desensitizes you. This is how military training works, for example. People go to the military and you learn how to become, a stone cold killer where, oh boy from Alabama never would harm a fly. You take them through, boot camp and through, say Navy SEAL training, and it's another story because there's in part psychological training going on, and that's the same thing. So when it comes to desensitizing us, I don't think that people can make an argument that it's not possible. In fact, television, which is prior to the internet, was one of the main desensitizers. So, in terms of, exposing people to, all kinds of, social norms that people weren't exposed to, or violence or those kinds of things. So here we have Facebook, Instagram, worldwide, doing exactly the kinds of things that you talked about, that you opened the show with, putting these kinds of images over and over and over and over again, exposing people to seeing things over and over and over again. You have to acknowledge that over time we become adapted to that. We become desensitized to it, and therefore our tolerance for it and our emotional response to it can sometimes change. So you have to absolutely, and when they say sometimes it can be positive, what they're talking about is, when you study something long enough, what happens is you can use it to help you in ways like overcoming phobias, for example. So people use clinically desensitization methods to, get people over phobias like spiders and, other so that, expose them to a little bit at a time until over time, they're less, they have less of an emotional reaction to it. So I just wanted to start out by kind of setting that stage for, listen, it does happen. People deny it sometimes. They want to say, oh, this is just Facebook. Oh, this is just Instagram. I'm just jumping on. I'm just having fun. Or my kids are just, enjoying themselves. It's just entertainment, without realizing absolutely that you're being desensitized. In a sense, people are being programmed by the things that they see day in and day out. So to answer the question, and I'll throw it back to you, is social media desensitizing us to our detriment? My answer to that is yes, I do believe so. And it has a lot to do with some of the things that you talked about, but I don't want to go on that track without throwing it back to you, because I did a lot there just in setting it up.
Well, thank you for qualifying the entire subject, because there are people, it's a little silly to me because there's so much proof. You know what I mean? So much proof of desensitization. There's
a lot of syllables.
There's so much proof of it. Quickly, I want to say, I see you guys in the comments. If you want to join the panel, please, by all means, we welcome your objections. You may have a whole completely different spin on it. So thank you so much for sharing that in detail, because it is a fact. This is not a myth. We're not making this up. This really happens to people, to the point where science has used it to help people with phobias. You mentioned, some innocent guy from Alabama. Now he's a stone cold killer because he's out in Iraq somewhere and he has to kill people to survive to get back home, right? I'll go a little further. A lot of people think that I'm desensitized, or I'm too hardcore, or I don't care about things that other people are usually emotional about, right? And they may very well be right? But I've been desensitized. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. You have to, young girls have to develop their masculine energy before their female energy, in order to survive the streets. And we're watching people get killed, and we're going to funerals every month, just unheard of, horrible, traumatic things that no teenager on earth should be going through. Funerals every month, and it's like you were just hanging out with your friend, and then they call you and he's like, oh, such and such is dead, the funeral is next week. I'm like, well, I was just with him or her. And this is constantly happening. And then you have dysfunctional homes and broken parents and things like that. So you just grow up with armor, right? And it makes you look at the world differently. You're not as sensitive to things, right? So that's good and bad. The reason why I don't think that it's to our detriment today is because social media exists. And let me explain. The reason why I say that is because social media is ruthless. We've all seen social media make fun of children that were handicapped. We've all seen social media make fun of children or old people that were quote unquote not attractive, mainstream. I mean, they go in, they are ruthless. It's no holds barred. There's no rules to it. I've seen people like, oh, well, such and such got killed. Well, good for her. What was she doing? Things like that. So it's really, really hardcore. So the more desensitized you are, sad to say, the better you are at surviving the world presently. Now, I'd say different and I'd feel different if social media didn't exist, but everybody's addicted to social media and it's where they spend the most time. So I would rather you be on someone vulnerable, a teenage girl or a teenage boy, be desensitized than be vulnerable to the people that are going to be vicious. Because again, the past 10 years, the suicide rate amongst teenagers has increased exponentially. Why? How? All these kids have been on social media for the past 10 years. And it's not just children anymore. It is adults bullying adults. Okay. With that said, please go to Talk with Frank Goodin. We talked about social media, mobs, and cults on his channel. but it's an objection show. So please check that out. Speaking about, adults now joining in the fray of bullying and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just children. Women are becoming depressed because they don't have the perfect body that these girls are building up now, through surgery, and they're making their nose smaller and their lips bigger, and they're all looking like cartoons. So a woman that doesn't have those features may feel a certain way. Same with, it happens with men too. There's nothing but personal trainers online. Everybody has a six-pack. Everybody has a perfect life. So the more sensitive you are to these things, the harder time you're going to have in life. So even going back to me, a lot of people like, you're too cold, or you're too cruel, or you're rude, or you're too blunt. But you know what? It's my armor, because I don't come from a place or a background where if I was like Little Miss Sensitive, I would have survived at all. That's not what the South Bronx. That's not what the South Bronx is. So I don't think it's desensitizing us to our detriment. I think it's desensitizing us for our survival due to the current environment. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to be desensitized to survive. It's pretty cold that you have to be desensitized to survive, but that is our current environment. And I'd rather somebody be desensitized than, contemplating suicide because someone told them you're the ugliest girl I've ever seen. Or you get cats one day, or nobody wants you, or you and your 5 kids. I'd rather it be that way. Sad, yes, but necessary, I think.
I got you. I object, Jen. I object. All right. So here's why. So I believe that you are talking about your response to all these things, the things that you're talking about. You have been able to develop that shell, grow that shell, that exterior that allows you to be able to deal with a lot of what social media is throwing at you. And I feel like maybe that's kind of the angle you're coming from. The reason why I object is because social media is for a lot of the reasons that you're doing that you spoke on a little bit earlier. Social media is the one that's promoting, say these out of proportion, overblown Barbie doll images, for the females. Because social media is the one that's propagating it. It's everywhere. So kids, from prepubescent on up, can't escape it. This is now what the reality is. And if it were happening, if let's say that was, the way it was in, say, a highly progressive metropolitan area like maybe LA or New York, and let's say there was no social media, then it would be happening there. And that would be part of the sickness in LA or New York, where you go there and we've probably seen documentaries, I feel like I have, where, some innocent person comes from another place and then they go to LA and whoa, boom, it's like they get hit with culture shock because of this type of thing, the fake behinds, the fake breasts, the fake lips, everything. And in order to compete and even live in that environment, you better adapt or you're going to face the consequences. Right. Social media has made that the norm. And to me, that's why it's to our overall detriment. Social media is now put those kinds of things, and instead of just having that sickness in LA or New York, or pick a vice and then pick a place where it happens to be. Instead, now, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. That's my background behind me in Jacksonville, Florida, which it's actually a metropolitan area, but it's not necessarily some, destination go-to place, or even the little counties around Jacksonville, Madison, Florida, or Stark. Now they have the same sickness that is common in LA and New York. Now, the teenagers growing up in Callahan, Florida, are jumping on Instagram, and they're doing all the Instagram. They're trying to have the look of the Instagram baddie that is out there. So for me, and I'll kick it back to you. To me, that because social media exists, that is what is throwing us all out of whack across the board And it's forcing people like you to either develop that shell that you speak of, which you have been able to do, and it's forcing you to either do that in order to survive, which is what you're talking about, or guess what? If you don't, what do you see? You mentioned the stat. In the last 10 years, the suicide rate has gone up for teens, and it's completely related to social media. And so what about all those poor teens who were not able to develop that shell?
Okay, I guess this is a re-objection in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I understand what you're saying, right? But I feel like we have the problem. The problem isn't going anywhere. The problem is really, really bad, where it is now taking lives. It's not just depressing people, it is now taking lives. So don't you think it's healthier for someone to be desensitized in order to be able to deal with those things? I'll qualify it by saying, when I was young, I thought my dad was too much. I was like, okay, this is feeling like tyranny. Okay, I'm like, you're too strict, you're too hardcore. My dad was very much the type of person. He was cold. He was like, he didn't do hospitals, he didn't do tears. He was like, if you're sick, you're gonna die. If you're pregnant and the baby's deformed, you get an abortion. Why would you want to deal with a handicapped child? I think cemeteries are a waste of land. So many people could live on this land, and you're just using. And when I was younger, I was like, geez, Dad, that's a bit much. You're a little insensitive, right? But the more I grew up around him, especially in 2021, I appreciate my father so very much. So very much. When I was growing up, bit much. 2021, I thank the universe that that's the home that I grew up in, because it prepared me for all of this. It prepared me for this environment. Had I not grown up like that, now my mother, on the other hand, I'm the polar opposite. Super soft, feed the homeless, everybody matters, extreme opposite. So I'm in the middle like, oh, I don't know, Mom. Dad looks like he's surviving better, right? And as children, we gravitate towards the parent that wins. It's just psychologically, it's like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the abused person. I don't want to be the soft person. Mom, you're great, but I see a lot of relatives treat you, however. Dad, on the other hand, nobody's playing with dad, right? So I'm glad that I am desensitized, because I think it's for the benefit, right? Speaking of wasting land to bury thousands and thousands of people, now I'm like, cremation all the way. Cremation. Do not give someone you've never met before $10,000 to put me in a wood box and in the ground. Don't do it. I don't want to put that bill on my family. I don't want to put that bill on my husband. I don't want to put that bill on my child. I just don't want to do it. I am no longer there. And I'm not sentimental enough, and I'm trying to train my family to not be sentimental enough. Do not go to a plot to talk to me. Guess who's not there? Me. I'm not there. I'm gone. So cremate me, sprinkle me with glitter, go on with your lives. Remember the good times, the happy times, and the fun, right? Now, some people may say, oh my God, that's so insensitive. Like, everybody likes going to a grave. How dare you? You know what I mean? But I'm like, no, but look at the benefit. My family doesn't have to continue to suffer at that plot and picture me in that box. So it's like, I'm doing it for your benefit, right? But a lot of people don't want things that are for their benefit, even as for their benefit. So just going back to the point, I really do think I got to stick with, in this current environment, being desensitized is very healthy. And I think it's a necessity, because it's not getting better. It is getting worse. Now, if Facebook and Instagram crashes like it did today forever, then I would say, hey, soften up a little bit. But as long as I've seen people berated and abused and bullied like I've seen online, and if they weren't addicted, then it'd be great. But we're all addicted to social media. It's the first thing we do in the morning. It's the last thing we do at night. We're all on these things. So it's in our minds to be on these things. So on top of that, it's a very, very cruel place where people can be cruel and be hidden on catfish pages. We're on it all day. So I recommend being desensitized. I totally validate that you're saying it's really bad, because we don't want our children and people going through this in general, but I'm like, it's here. It's happening. Now what?
So I want to, let's see here.
Vaccinated.
I'm gonna try to quibble with you. All right. So you agree, I believe, that overall social media is like the end of the world. Its presence, generally speaking, like it's leading us down this path of
I wouldn't say like the end of the world, like the apocalypse or like the zombie take, but I would say it is leading us down a very destructive path that I think we're not going to be able to come back from if we don't take control of it.
Okay. All right. So how?
Addictions are hard to take control of.
So how is it doing that, in your opinion? Like the biggest thing, because it's doing it in a lot of different ways. It's leading us down the wrong path in a lot of ways. What how would you say, what's the biggest way that social media is basically the harbinger of death for humanity?
because they have their billion-dollar companies that are hiring million-dollar level programmers who program things to bring you in and keep you on. And that's a great question you asked me, because today there's a whistleblower from Facebook that is out to, and before her, if you watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it explains how the programmers work on their computers to keep you addicted, right? So now we have a brand new executive from Facebook who quit Facebook, and she's whistleblowing, right? She's explaining how they're designing programs to keep you on, doing fake, political scandals and fake political lies and racial issues, because it keeps people engaged, right? Because we're sensitive about a lot of topics, race being one of them, politics being one of them. And she's also saying that she feels like Facebook was one of the reasons for the Capitol riot. I agree. I think it was easy access for people to be like, no, that's an exaggeration. But I think Trump was very calculated and good at moving people, you know what I mean, in masses with his Twitter account. So I took the long way to say, that's the biggest thing that they're doing. It's not a fun place for friends, right? When Facebook first started, it was like, place for friends. I could keep in contact with my sister in Florida. It was so much fun. Now it's like, I can tell you to go to hell. How dare you say? So it's morphing into something really, really ugly and dangerous. And they don't care. They just care about this, which is why it was so powerful that Mark Zuckerberg lost $7 billion today, because we weren't on for a couple of hours.
I got you. So what I'm seeing and listening to you, I feel like you and I are talking about the overall issue, and I see you brought somebody up. So I'm kind of cut my response a little bit so we can get some people to object, because they object to one of us, and we're gonna find out who it is. I feel like we're talking about it in two very interesting ways and where we might not necessarily disagree. I'm speaking, when I look at this question, I'm speaking about how I feel like social media is desensitizing us to our detriment in a very, very broad fashion. It's exposing everybody to increasingly denigrating social norms. And that has an effect on everybody, everybody that's a part of it. That's how I'm seeing it. You're reading it, appear to be reading it as, you know what? Yes, that's happening. But through social media, I am being desensitized to the effects from that. And I hear you loud and clear, and that's admirable, and I think that's a kind of a rare quality. Jen, not everybody is built like you. Not everybody had that strong dad who was part of your foundation, that even when you kind of objected to the kind of the way he was, the way he was in general with some of the things, that what he instilled in you was strong enough that gave you the ability to then develop a hard exterior. Imagine if he wasn't in the picture, like many modern families are, where it's just the mom. And imagine your mom being the opposite, like you say that she is, sweetheart, total sweetheart. And imagine if you were exposed to social media now, having only had your mom as the influence. And see, that's most people. I think, you are the exception there. And so if it's here, and if that is the effect, and the reality is that we have parents families that are single parent homes, from really maybe a majority of moms out there are just sweethearts. They want to work, they want to take care of their kids. They ain't trying to hurt nobody, they're not trying to compete with anybody. They're sweethearts. But then social media comes in, the big beast, and it's like just exposing our kids. And so I'm getting what I'm saying is, I think we're talking about it in two very interesting ways. But part of why I'm objecting to you is because I feel like you are projecting and saying, hey, it's kind of good because at least I can develop the fortitude to deal with it. And I'm trying to say reality check, reality, Jen, reality. Everybody don't have the background you have.
Okay, that is true. And I hear that a lot. I do hear that a lot from people. So I'm not the type of person that, some people is like, the more you tell them something about themselves, they're like, no, that's not me. If more than 3 people tell me the same thing, I'm like, oh, okay, let me reflect, right?
Right.
So you're absolutely right. A lot of people tell me that, Jen, everybody's not like you. But, I am a tough love type of person. And I'm going to bring up Juwanda because she's been so patient and I'm glad that she's here. I'm a tough love type of person. And I feel like, I try to bring people in to my world and my experience and my reality because I think it's safer for them. Social media has me working 100 times harder on my daughter and on my grandson, like 100 times harder. I'm constantly having to feed them the reality of you are enough. You are wonderful. Your complexion is the best thing on the planet. You are beautiful. You are smart. It's like, it's giving me extra work. Although I'm the type to build people up that I love anyway, it's giving me extra work because I know these kids are on social media all the time. And I'm like, don't you for 1 second believe any crap that you see on there or hear on there. You know who you are, So I'm instilling that in them. And I think as parents, that's what we have to do constantly. But honestly, if it wasn't for social media, I would not be going this hard. I would be going my regular hard. Like, don't listen to people, sticks and stones. Who cares, right? You know who you are. You know who I raised, But now with social media, it's like you got to constantly check in. We have an environment now where you have to constantly check in. What happened today? What did you see on social media? Was it funny? So I can't disagree with you. Everybody's not like me, but I wish more people were because I think it'd be a safer place for them, is my point. And with that said, I want to bring up Juwanda. She's been very patient. Welcome, Juwanda. We're so happy to see you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I seen the notification, so I popped in. Oh my goodness, this is a great topic.
Yes.
I'm more I kind of object with you, Jen. I object because everyone don't like. I agree with Frank on that aspect. Everyone don't have the same coping mechanisms you have, and also I like to point out because there's so many categories on YouTube. There are some good things on YouTube. I don't say but the majority of what's being pushed is the bad stuff, of course. So, which makes a problem in society where you got children being exposed to things a lot younger than, like, my daughters knew about bisexuality at 12, and I didn't know anything about it until I was a grown woman.
Right.
So there I don't think it's that. I think it, with adults, you could discern and make a choice, but those children, I think it affects more. And then you're raising all these psychopaths, literally, because they watch these things all day. They're absorbing all this foolishness. And I think there needs to be more checks and balances. Sometimes people go too far, but there's always these legal aspects and everything. But yes, I do believe social media is desensitizing us to our detriment, because these younger parents don't know what, they don't listen to wisdom, and their role models are Beyonce, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, these people that they look up to who are talking a bunch of foolishness. So you're raising a society of dum-dums. I feel that's why I'm out here pushing education. I'm pushing the things for these kids. I want them to learn about sunflowers. So I think, I think it's up to us adults who see the detriment. We need to get on social media and start pushing the good stuff. Like that's what I'm trying to do. That's my point.
Okay. Thank you so much for that objection.
And so on point with the time too. Go ahead, like a pro.
I'm working on it.
Okay, like a pro.
Okay, well, I gotta say, I don't really have like a re-object.
I have a story. Whenever you want, I definitely say what you did, but I have a story to share that kind of talks about what she did. But go ahead.
Okay, awesome, Sauce. So then I'm gonna pass it to you, Frank, because I've listened and I just appreciate the objection. I don't really have an objection to that objection. So if you want to take over, that's
yeah. Let me tell this, but just to support a little bit of what she's talking about. I think Joanna brings up a very interesting thing that she talked about that happens, but that personally happened. You talked about how kids these days are being exposed to this concept of homosexuality a little bit earlier, right? Same-sex partners, bisexual or homosexual. So just today on the ride home, my youngest daughter, 9 years old, she's in the 4th grade, tells me, "Hey, Dad, yes, today my best friend told me that she liked me." I said, "Liked you? What do you mean? How'd she like you?" "She has a crush on me. She likes me. This is another 4th grader. I said, "Okay, so, what did you tell her?" I told her that I don't like her in that way. I don't like her like that. And then that went on and we had like kind of a conversation. My point being that here it is, you mentioned that we weren't exposed to things until we were adults. And then, you had someone who had been exposed to it at 12 years old. Well, my daughter's 9, prepubescent. And here we have her having to be in this experience where you have someone else who, for whatever reason, has been socialized or educated, exposed to that kind of thing to the point where she is absolutely 100% comfortable going to another 4th grader and saying, "I got a crush on you." Just amazing. And to me, I can't help but think and feel that type of expression was influenced somehow by the presence of it, the ubiquity of it on social media. So just a personal story on that point, just younger and younger and younger. And I feel like that just kind of brings your point home, Joanna.
Wow. I need to respond to that. First and foremost, I see we have a lot of people in the room. We have nothing against the LGBTQ plus.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with homosexuality if that's your thing. But I will tell you what my gay friend said. On my channel a while back, I had a show called LGBTQ for Dummies. And I had a transgender friend and a gay friend, and they were just breaking down general questions that people always ask of gay people. And one of my gay friends said, "You know what?" So when I asked them about agenda, because I think that's kind of like what you're talking about. There's an agenda going on social media where even the LGBTQ community has become commercial. It's pop culture now, right? It's no longer, it's gone beyond a sexual preference. Now it's pop culture. Now it's t-shirts and hair color and parties. And now it's commercial, right? So our kids are exposed to it. And then you add a rainbow to it. Children love rainbows and unicorns. And it's like, so when I asked my gay friend, what do they think about, the quote unquote gay agenda? My gay friend told me, "Listen, I don't know specifically about a gay agenda, but I don't want my child knowing about any sexuality. not regular sexuality, not homosexuality, not transgender sexuality. And I thought that it was such a great point coming from someone who is part of that community, because for your example, 9 years old,
Right.
a crush what?
Right.
I don't care if it's a boy or a girl. This is not okay. Like, this is not okay, and it's dangerous. So I completely understand what you're saying, which is why we should desensitize our kids to this. We should let them know that they're going to be approached by kids who think they're gay already.
Yes, and just throwing in. Thank you for making that point, because when we talk about this, it's really, really easy to automatically to have someone who maybe is LGBTQ to kind of think that you're saying something different. So being very, very clear, you're 100% right. It's not as if here we're saying or promoting any anti agenda. It is that point specifically. When we talk about prepubescence, this is pre-puberty. It seems like discussions along those lines of any kind of sexuality, it seems out of place. Kids' minds should not be on something like that in 4th grade. And we know, because we've had generations and generations of kids before us where, I mean, come on, you adult things, when you get puberty and you learn all about what that means, and then you go into an adult and handle your sexuality responsibly, and you make your choices one way or the other. That's for adults. It's not for kids. And so, so thanks for making that very, very important distinction. So I just want to jump in and say that exact same thing.
And then I'll respond to that and bring Jawanda back on. If anybody wants to join us on the panel, please come and object. I want to respond to that by saying that, it's been, unfortunately, like I said, the LGBTQ community has been commercialized, right? So we went from, it's acceptable to be homosexual to now it's the cute thing to do, right? So now children just looking at it like, oh, it's the fun thing to do. And they're always talking about it. And there's so much tolerance now. And, so now I think the message is getting misconstrued to now it's like, oh, and there's one specific character I don't like. Okay. It has nothing to do with her being, she just came out the closet. Her name is, and I'll say her name because it's okay that the word gets out that I don't like her. I don't care. You know me. I am my daddy's daughter.
Right. That's right, Jen. You're going to tell it. You're going to tell it. You're going to tell it.
I'm going to tell it. Her name is JoJo Siwa. Now, my child is so much older. My child is almost 30. So I don't know like all these new Nickelodeon and characters like I did when she was little, right? Her name is JoJo Siwa. She's 19 years old and she just came out the closet. She's a lesbian. Great. My problem with JoJo Siwa is similar to your story, kind of like what we're talking about here, where she dresses like a 5-year-old. If anybody wants to Google JoJo Siwa, it is spelled JoJo, like JoJo, and Siwa, S-I-W-A. And I want you to see how she dresses and how she carried herself. Like in 19 or 20, to me, you are a woman. Okay, you're a full-grown woman. So she's this white woman who just came out the closet, but she still presents as a 5-year-old. She wears a big rainbow bow on the side of her head and big fluffy skirts and lots and lots of glitter. She talks about candy and toys and partying and it. So that's what bothers me, where it's like your private life is your private life. But when you're mixing presenting as a 5-year-old all over social media and then coming out the closet, not cool, right? Not cool. And if you say that, people automatically take it to what you said, Frank. Oh, well, you have a problem with homosexuality. Absolutely not. That woman can do whatever she wants with her life. But when you are presenting it on your platform with your big rainbow bow and your big fluffy skirt, holding a unicorn, I have an issue with that. Because like my gay friend said, I don't want my kid knowing about any sexuality. If my child is tuning into Nickelodeon and my child is 5 years old, why does she have to know someone came out the closet? A 19-year-old woman came out the closet who's dressed like a doll. I take issue with that. And again, desensitize your children. So they can have armor against these agendas, because whether we like it or not, there are agendas to keep our children hooked on TV. And if Jawanda would like to add to that, I'd love to hear from you if you have any objections.
I don't have any objections to what you said, but I do want to make a point about what you said about tolerance. Mm-hmm. Well, we tolerate everything. You know, social media has made it possible that we have to tolerate everything. And just like I made a point to my husband one day, you know, I'm not your typical Black woman. I don't like rap. I never have, from the beginning. You know, from the beginning of rap. I was a teenager and everything. So it's like, okay, I don't like rap. So, but when people play it so loudly on my street, and I think it's rude that I have to listen to your music. I'm not playing my jazz to annoy you, you know. So these are the things people, the social media is designed to make money. So whatever they think sells, they're going to push it. Now, it's our responsibility as adults and parents. We have to make sure our kids, even though they're exposed, we have to let them know what's wrong and right. You know, I feel the same way about violence. I mean, I can recall watching The Exorcist as a teenager, and then some of the horror films that's out now, I would never look at because they're so gory, and I can't look at all that stuff. It's just nasty to me. But I'm an adult and old enough to discern that. But if they have anime that's almost just as graphic. Mm-hmm. You know, and these kids can see it on games and everything else. And I just think there's no more checks and balances on social media. There's nothing, you know, as long as it's making money and people likes it, you know, the media is going to continue to push it. I think it becomes more of the responsibility of the parents to try to keep the kids aware of what's going on, but let them know, no, you're not supposed to just go out and kill people or commit suicide because you've seen the series 13 Reasons. I mean, I was just flabbergasted about that whole series in the first place. I was like, so if a whole bunch of kids just start committing suicide, what they're gonna do, you know? But it's been on 3 seasons, so they keep pushing. So it didn't surprise me to know that the rates of suicides are going up, because there's a lot of films out there. There's music that's promoting it. So it might become cool to commit suicide one day. You see what I'm saying? It goes from one bad thing to another, and it affects the society as a whole. And those that are doing good, you don't see them anymore. So, like I said, if social media would start pushing the good stuff, then you would see the good stuff. There's people that teach Bible on YouTube. They have meditative thoughts and spiritual healing things. There's beautiful things on YouTube. But those are people that are using it constructively to help people. If you want to entertain and destroy people's minds and everything, that's what's going to happen, because that's what the media has been doing since they started. You know, even back in the 50s when they did the subliminal messages with the smoking of the cigarettes, and they had all the housewives smoking cigarettes. So it's a media thing. It's a media thing. I make money. I don't care if I kill half the society doing it. I'm just going to make money. So I think money is the root of the detriment and the desensitizing and all this mess you see on social media. So that's my opinion.
Gotcha. Can I, Jen, I wanted to say something, but looks like you brought someone in, so you can steer the ship if you need to here.
No, I just wanted to follow what Joanna said. Yes, follow the money and you find the answer. Follow the money. But if you wanted to respond, please do. And hey, Vaughn, we just added Vaughn to the panel, one of our regulars. Good to see you.
Hello.
I have to say
Yeah.
in a minute.
Yeah, just a quick statement, and then we can definitely throw it to Vaughn. It's I find it very telling what you opened with, Jen, when you just mentioned how much money was lost in the few hours that Facebook and Instagram was out. It really is indicative of just how pervasive social media, at least those two platforms, Facebook and Instagram, are in our lives all over the globe. And so it's almost like a thought experiment. It makes you kind of wonder, it makes you wonder, what if, and this is like, Marvel has this new what if series that, kind of with the characters, what if something different happened, how the world would be different. It makes you wonder, what if Facebook and IG went down for a month. When we had the pandemic, and people, this might be a little bit lost on people now because it's a little bit different now, but when the pandemic first hit and everybody was staying in, it had some ancillary effects. People were staying in, so they were driving less. So the pollution all over the world, the level of pollution started going down in China, in Shanghai, where it's a perpetual smog, right? They were seeing clear skies. Plants began growing in the streets in urban areas. Animals were coming out and visiting places they'd never seen because we were gone, and all that was kind of a byproduct of the pandemic. It kind of makes you wonder, by extension, man, what kinds of positive things would happen if social media, Facebook and IG, just somehow was just out of the picture for even just a month. It's just one of those things. I just wanted to kind of throw that out.
If I had to guess, a lot of outdoor businesses would boom. Because then you have to go out for entertainment, because people don't even watch TV anymore for entertainment. They're like on their phones all day. I think outside businesses, outdoor businesses would boom. I want Vaughn to comment on what he's heard so far, but then I want to steer the conversation just a little bit since we're getting towards the end. And I'm going to agree with you on one point, Frank. So you have a treat coming up. Don't
yeah.
I'm going to agree with you with an entirely different subject that I think you'll find interesting. So, Vaughn, welcome to the panel. It is great to see you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Brother Vaughn.
Oh, hey, how's everybody doing?
And based on what I heard yesterday, Vaughn the Great, that's who you are now.
Oh, wow. You're funny. Thank you, sir. Yeah, no, the social media thing, as far as desensitizing and to our detriment, it's pros and cons of that. And I just believe that it can be detrimental, as to how it's used. I mean, there's some goods and there's some evils at the same time. So I'm listening to both of you, and I agree with Frank, and then I agree with Jen. So I'm not trying to be double-minded, but I mean, you both are making some very good points, about the social media. And as far as like when I think about my son, he's 16 now, and I try to really watch the social media with him from a little kid, but these children are being influenced by other kids when they go to school too. So it's like, what are these kids being influenced by when they go to school? Just like you said, Frank, about the little girl who was, talking to your daughter, and that's why I believe that home-based teaching is so important, especially when it comes to our children. And as far as the LGBTQ thing is concerned, I just believe that children have a right to their innocence, and I don't believe that they should be influenced, in their youth with all of these, sexual connotations and all of that. Let them be kids, and then there's a time for that when they get older, and basically, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, thank you for adding that. Definitely, Vaughn. So I'm gonna steer the conversation a little bit with the few minutes that we have left. Frank, I will. This is where I will agree. Where desensitization
Right?
is a detriment. Here's something that I've seen online that's disturbing, and I don't know if anyone else on the panel has seen it or anybody in the comments has seen it. I have seen people lose people, like death of any sort, and run to post the pictures, and then within a 24-hour period, they're back to posting memes and jokes and things like that. That's when I find it detrimental. I find that very disturbing. I've seen, women post their child committed suicide, and then a week later they're back with their friends and hanging out and posting, hey, we're drinking. I've seen people post, hey, my grandmother just died, we're at the funeral, selfies. So when I see things like that, I'm like, wow, what is the human being turning into? In the next 10 years, are we even going to care that we're losing loved ones? You know what I mean? Because social media is so fast. It's a conveyor belt, right? So you'll be thinking, oh, my husband died of a heart attack. Oh, I'm back. Nene Leakes, for instance, rest in peace, Greg Leakes, Real Housewives of Atlanta, right? Her husband died. She's back on social media like, hey, so watch blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, oh, like I can't even fathom losing somebody and wanting to be anywhere near social media, talking to anybody, having anybody ask me any questions, looking at the likes, looking at people TikToking on. I just can't see it. But I in their defense, I think they're being conditioned, as we're discussing now, to be desensitized. I think it's a conditioning, and the more years you spend on social media, the more desensitized you become personally. I think that's a different point from becoming so desensitized that you could defend yourself from bullies and not care that people are bullying you. I think this type of desensitivity is way more disturbing, where I see people at funerals posting about they just lost their mom, their dad, their husband, their child even. And then the next day they're posting, hey, I got these red bottoms. And I'm like, you just lost your child. And I'm not trying to judge your mourning, but it's not something that I've seen before social media. People would mourn. Okay. But then even with that, Frank, let me ask you, is it better that people are not mourning and not living and not losing their lives because they lost someone? Is that a good thing?
I think what you're speaking to is a very, I think it's astute. I haven't seen it because I'm not necessarily on, all the time. I'm spending too much time grinding and raising these girls and everything else that we're doing. But I believe you 100% when you say that you see it in terms of that specific thing. Someone dies and there might be a quick second of expressing condolences or what have you, and then it's back to the hey, selfies like you said, or the red bottoms. What you're speaking to,
it goes like this: death, GoFundMe link, and then we're back at it.
Wow. And so to me, I think that's a very astute question you asked. Where, if that continues on the path that it is, where does that lead us? 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What you're speaking to, I'm going to characterize it this way. It's almost a very slow and gradual degradation of human dignity, because that is what's at play when we respect and honor the people who passed away. It's part of a tradition of honoring people who were here, who affected you, who helped you, who loved you, and so it's a human dignity thing when we say we want to come together and remember all those good times and honor the legacy, and let's talk about how you affected people. If that slowly goes away over time, then in effect we are slowly and surely degrading human dignity. And so if we degrade human, just in the same way that people who are used to it, say in the streets, in these streets, in the real life streets, where, you know, death is a on the street corners is a normal thing. And it's like, you know, over time, he's like, hey, it is what it is. Somebody else moves to the street corner and you keep it moving, keep it moving. In a very similar way, it's happening in social media, differently, but in a similar way. And so, yeah, what happens when we remove human dignity from the equation 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Can't be anything good. Everything that we value as human beings are related to a certain amount of human self-worth. So that can't be good.
And that worries me more than someone, you know, growing thick skin and being able to handle a mob of bullies. That worries me a lot more. That's what I find disturbing, where I'm just, you know, scrolling and I'm like, dude, like your girlfriend just died 2 days ago. Like I find, even with my, you know, insensitive, rude, you know what I mean, crass, vulgar personality, I find that disturbing. That's something that jars me when I'm like, your son just, you know what I mean? It's like, how could you even log on? You know what I mean? I'd be gone for months. If I come back at all, because that changes your world. So that's interesting. Even me with my daddy's genes, I'm like, yeah, that's scary. So I want to ask of our wonderful guests if anybody wants to add to that, or have seen anything similar, or have anything to say. You can unmute yourselves, because I see I can't unmute you. So
Yes,
Yeah.
I can address that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I agree with you on that. You know, I was a Facebooker and all of this. I never did do Twitter and IG. You know, my son created an IG account for me, and I still don't know how to use it. You know, I'm a little bit of older person, but what I did notice, because I'm on it less now, way less than what I used to be. But I did notice now it's become like an obituary every time I get on there. You know, and it used to be like kind of cool and fun, and hey, oh, this person went to the beach, and oh wow, they're having a good time. And now it's like, as I scroll, it's like so and so died, so and so, oh, the celebration of life, and so it had become a little bit depressing to me. So I kind of I kind of leaned away from it, you know. And yeah, you're right. And people that they are so insensitive about what they do post. You know, I have a relative who loves to post all of our family business on social media. And I just don't understand, how do you do that? Like, her kid could be in a health situation, and she's going to explain everything to everybody on Facebook. It's like, that's such a private thing. Why would you put that on Facebook? But people are insensitive as to what they're posting. So it kind of turned me off a little bit. I can see like the pros and cons of it, but I'm kind of turned off by it at this point. So that's it. That's all I have to add.
Vaughn, I have to say, I agree with you 100%, because I've seen that as well. It's like I'm scrolling, and it's like, now it's to the point where when I see a celebrity's picture, I'm like, oh my God, are they dead?
Yeah.
Done that, like, beautiful picture of like, oh my God, did Oprah die? Like, with a lot of people posting her, that's what's happening now. When I see a celebrity, I'm like, oh my God, is she, you know what I mean? Because it's become an obituary. Even when you look on Instagram, it's like people have selfies, their activities, and then this one is dead. We got DMX and Michael K. Williams and this one and that. And it's like, it's becoming an obituary, and it is depressing. It is depressing.
And you're liable, and you're liable to scroll down to an impromptu funeral.
Oh yes.
I mean, it's like, boom, I didn't expect to see an actual casket and a body today.
Yeah.
But here I am.
I've seen it. Do you want to add anything to that?
That was funny, Mom. That was absolutely.
Not even dressed for a funeral today.
But yeah, I mean, I actually was during the pandemic, that's what was happening to me. I kept getting invites to Skype for funerals through Facebook and everything. And I did lose a lot of family members down south during the pandemic. So of course I couldn't travel. So I seen all the postings and stuff. But then, just on my page alone, I got classmates dying, and they're putting up all the obituaries, and I can tell when my friends are mourning because they'll keep posting and posting and posting and posting. And it's like you know, everyone mourns in a different way. I don't, I'm kind of like you, Jen, in that I'm kind of don't go to. I have never went to anybody's grave after we buried them and put them in the ground. I have not went back. Why? Because I know that person isn't there. It just makes no sense to go talk to grass or something, to me. So, but it has been, like I said before, social media has allowed everything to explode, even mourning, violence, sex, drugs, everything, just anything that's sinful and not good is being just thrown in your face. But I'm just hoping there's an inspiration in some social media outlet where they just put up positive things, because that's what we need right now. It's so much detriment in the world. Why can't we find something nicer to look at?
So true.
I mean, have you ever meditated and just stood on the beach and watched the waves? Not go play or anything, just watch them. Listen to the sounds. Look at the fish. These are things that relieve stress and all those things. But, everybody likes to be wound up with all this madness. So, I try to stay away from it. And I try to keep my children and grandchildren from it too.
Thank you, Joanna. We have one, even though we're at our tail end, we do have, I don't want to leave this person hanging. We have another guest, Alan Ramos. Alan Ramos, have you been listening to the show? Do you have an objection?
Yeah. Well, basically, I just want to add one point that I think everyone left out is just the regular media. Like, for instance, how games like GTA has influenced our young children. Also, TV series, like, for instance, watching Power and the things come from Power. There was a TV called The Shield, and you kind of tune in every week to see how they get out of that predicament of crime and everything, and you get desensitized about, you feel, well, he's only selling drugs just because he got a baby to take care of, but doing that, you're destroying everybody else's life to do it. And you kind of like every week trying to figure out, and you see them kill somebody who got in the way, and the rivals are being killed. I mean, some of the stories are like, for instance, I've been following the Power series, and they're interesting to watch. So I'm kind of glued every week to watch it. But it's like I realize that I'm just watching and I'm rooting for this criminal to get away with criminal activity, and we do it every single time. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Wow,
You see me over here nodding. I mean, stuff is absolutely true. Go ahead, Jen. I don't want to.
That's a great point, because I think that
Excellent.
Television was the first influencer that we had, and it's true. What's the saying? What you watch, what you listen to constantly, you become, right, without even knowing, or your point of views change without even knowing, subconsciously. And he made an excellent point. And there are certain programs that I've looked at, and I'm like, how do they even get away with that in this country? How does that even happen here, when China's banned Instagram and Facebook? Other countries have banned these social medias that thrive in this country. So you got to think, like, what is going on here? Is the greed so bad that they couldn't care less whether we kill each other, long as they're making money? And I think that is the case, because the saying is follow the money, right? But he makes an excellent point. What are we watching as adults and letting media get away with.
True.
You had a point.
Yeah, who was that you were talking to me? Yeah. Just to support that, and in fact, you said it, kind of underscore it. Following the money, as you say, and in fact, that's what this whistleblower business was all about. What was the person whistleblowing about? The person was whistleblowing about the fact that Facebook was basically, burying all of this actual legitimate research that shows the negative effects of the various things that they're doing in creating these echo chambers and putting out some of the content that they do. The very negative effects, they were putting it to the side, indicating that they had studied this and were aware of the effects, but had willingly decided to put that away. Why? To chase that dollar, because it was more profitable not to do something about it. And so, yeah, it is an old story here of the media putting out these stories where you find yourself rooting for the bad guy. You just turn the bad guy into the protagonist, and you have those effects as well. So yeah, I'm just underlining really what several of you have brought to the table so far.
Yeah, there's actually a series on Netflix called You. It's literally called You. And it's basically a guy who's stalking his girlfriends, killing some, etc., etc. It's very, very popular. People are pining to see season 2, which is coming, I believe, this month. So like Alan Ramos just said, the leading actor, the guy that plays the stalker and the murderer and stuff, he was in an interview, and this woman asked him, so how is it playing the character? Are you having fun? And he was like, I find it very interesting how people cheer for me and I'm despicable in the series. And I thought that was profound for the actor himself to say. He was like, I think it's interesting how much, if you watch me and make it entertaining, how much people, root for the bad guy, the white guy who gets away with everything. He literally added race in it and everything. So I thought that was really interesting. But season 2 is coming, and I have to admit, I was glued on season 1. The cliffhangers are crazy.
My guilty pleasure, I have to admit.
Well, I've never even heard of this show. This is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna do some research on it.
Yeah, season 2 is coming soon. So it's true, we do get involved with these characters. I think Instagram and Facebook, as we all, established here, is way, way, way worse. And we have to be all hands on deck with these children. And before we go, I want to say, please, please, please share these stories. Talk about these stories with your family. Watch Objections with your family. We never get too crazy. And it's imperative that you guys share our show, follow us, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because no, we are not cursing each other out on this show. So our subscriptions will be slower, right, than other channels, because we are not killing each other and cursing each other out. We have a lot of respect for Frank and I, for ourselves, for each other.
Thank God.
Our guests. I appreciate my guests so, so, so much. Remember that Objections shows on my page, On the Block with Jen, and then we flip it to Talk with Frank Goodin. So we're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But we welcome you on both channels, and we welcome you to object all the time. You can object here freely and passionately. If nothing else, you will get respect here. So guys, thank you so much. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell again. And click like or unlike if you didn't like it, long as you click something, right? We'll see you again soon, but we're going to be on Talk with Frank Goodin's page next. So remember, once on my page, then his, then mine, then his. You guys will get it sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
We just go.
Are you always on YouTube? I'm sorry. Are you always on YouTube or on Instagram?
We're always on YouTube, but if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can. It's the same name, On the Block with Jen here on Instagram, On the Block on YouTube. So you can find me there, and then Talk with Frank Goodin on YouTube. And it's in the caption. If you scroll down on this video, you'll see all our information. Yeah. And Talk with Frank Goodin. What's your name on Instagram?
It's just my name, Frank Goodin, on Instagram. Frank, or actually Frank B. Goodin too.
Okay, Goodin with an I, not with an E.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So again, it's in the caption. If you missed something or I'm talking too fast because I'm Puerto Rican, just check the bottom. All our information is there in the bottom. So please come back. We love having you on. Bring your friends too. If you know someone that can inject, please welcome them and invite them to this show. So this has been another
Yes.
amazing one. Good talk. Lots of
Another great one.
And that's what I love about this show. We leave, you know what I mean, in deep thought, like, wow. Frank, would you like to close out?
Well, I just, again, another great show here. I'm glad to be here over on your side, Jen. Great topic, timely. And just underlining everything that you said. This is something that we want to spread. We know it's going to spread a little slow because we're not killing each other like that. But we feel like over time, you know, this is something that we think just from our demonstration, you know, just by us doing what we're doing is going to actually pick up, you know, and more people. So please help that out. Spread the word.
I will, and I hope it does.
Yeah, I'm gonna start following you, Frank. I started following Jen. I saw a video of hers when you were talking about Candace Owens. And I love that. I loved it, but I wish I could have been on it because I could defend some. I can't defend her, but I could defend some of her points. And I was like, oh, I wish I could have been there. But I've been following you ever since I seen that. It was about a month. I just been following you, so I've been waiting for every time you show up on YouTube. But I'm gonna start following you, Frank. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And let me tell you something. I like the subject of Candace Owens, so we may revisit. I do like the subject of Candace Owens.
Might be some objections. Here we come.
Oh, it's gonna be a big objection show. Okay, so
I really
Well, I hope I could be there.
I'm gonna have to take my earrings off. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Good night. Have an amazing evening, and we will see you again on Talk with Frank Goodin's page, and then back on mine. Good night, guys. Have an amazing evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oops. Bye.